I have a question for Dr. Chavez. I do get a lot of referrals from my neurology colleagues for patients who suspected to have papilledema and they have headaches, and often what they have is congenital anomalous disc and some sort of primary headache syndrome. So I just wondering what the business of idiopathic intracranial hypertension without papilledema, how would you manage that, and is there any risk of visual loss?
You know, that's a great question. If you look at these patients with IAH without papilledema, they have visual field defects. They will get nasal nerve fiber bundle defects, and that can be progressive over the course of following these patients. So I think that as we follow the patient, we ultimately make a decision that the patient is complaining of a valid headache, that we are not altering by the usual ways we're handling that headache, thinking of it as a common or a classical migraine or whatever. And I have been surprised myself with a patient who had anomalous disc on one side that had IAH without papilledema. And what happened is that the papilledema was there in the anomalous disc, but it was very mild. And when we eventually tapped this patient, because I could not resolve her headache and I believed her, and her pressure was moderately elevated, the disc got a little bit better, but it was still anomalous. So I think that ultimately the way the decision is upon you to prove it, because these patients will go on to have visual field changes if you don't, and their headaches will continue if you don't. Does that answer your question?
Well, can they have that without papilledema?
Yeah. Well, there was a small change in her disc. This was before OCT. But she had an anomalous disc that was clear, and I could not see enough that I thought was truly papilledema there to marry an LP initially. But when I did, her pressure was in the upper 20s, low 30s, and with tapping her headache was better. And so she was not fat. So I think it does happen, and we just have to keep looking when we cannot explain a headache in a patient.
Let me make a comment about that. For many years, in addition to doing neuro-ophthalmology, I did general ophthalmology, and I suspect that most of the people are general ophthalmologists. The incidence of pseudotumor without papilledema is very small, and the incidence of headaches from that is even smaller, as you saw in the degree article. And it's very nice for neuro-ophthalmologists to say, this is what you do, this is what you do when you get headaches. When I saw patients in my general ophthalmology practice, they were sending, and are the eyes causing the headache? And I used to send back a note and said, no. The eyes are not causing the headache, and then let the primary care doctor work up the headache and treat the headache with a neurologist in tow if they want to. I think there are a bunch of things that we talked about today that I feel very uncomfortable with general ophthalmologists taking care of. There are certain things that we talked about today that I don't take care of because I think they're better off being taken care of by subspecialty neurologists. But you will spend, as Dr. Chavez said, to do an adequate examination for headache takes so much time, and we're general ophthalmologists. I think it's appropriate to say, you know what, the eyes are not causing the problem. Go back to your family doctor and let them work it out.
Well, you know, from the neurology side, I think that's really quite true. It's just as the patient sits in the chair, since I am a neurologist, I will talk to them about what their headache could be related to. And I have my staff so cued in to taking a good headache history for me that they'll come out of the room and they'll say, TMJ, Dr. Chavez, or they'll go say cervical strain. And so we make it a game as to how well they can help me decide what the headache is. So I think, and that you have a role that you can play, especially for some of the more benign etiologies for headache, like TMJ, because those patients are coming into you because they've got pain here, and it's going along the course of the frontalis muscle around the eye, and what they're worried about is not the pain that's here, but the pain that's around their eye, because they're afraid they're going to have blindness in that eye. So if you can feel that muscle and feel that it's tender, and tell them that it is, and send them to a dentist to take care of it, that's a good thing. So I think that certainly do what you're comfortable with, and work in conjunction with other specialists, so as Dr. Savino said.
Yes, I have questions to Savino. I have several patients with hemifacial spasm. I send them for MRI, MRA. It came with abnormal vessels, conjunctival vessels in cerebral-pontine angle. Do you recommend any neurosurgical intervention?
With the hemifacial spasm, the cause, and I didn't mention that, is largely a compression by a vessel on the nerve. And over the years, you set up this weakness and this aberrant regeneration that causes the firing. And most of the people that I see with hemifacial spasm are older. But I always tell them that there is a surgical option to this. And the surgical option, if done correctly, will cure this. But there are complications. And then I make sure I send them to someone who has a huge amount of experience with doing these decompressive surgeries, the Janetta procedure, etc. In fact, when I was in Philadelphia, I used to send the patients to another state, to Pittsburgh, because the people there had the greatest amount of experience. I offer the surgery to all young people. Because if you're 25 or 35 and you don't want to have injections every 3 to 6 months for the rest of your life, I think you at least need to hear about the operation, hear what the risks and the benefits are, and then make your decision.
Yes, I would like to thank all the distinguished speakers for great talks. First question.
This will be the last question.
Thank you. First question for Dr. Chavez. Using TNF, anti-TNF for ocular myasthenia gravis, aren't you? Remicade. Do you use Remicade? What's your protocol for using Remicade?
We have used Remicade and for myasthenia, yes.
Right. That was my first question.
I think rituximab is better. That's our preference right now. But we have used Remicade in the past.
What's your protocol in that?
I'm sorry?
What's your protocol?
You
admit the patients overnight?
For the rituximab?
Yeah.
No, it's an outpatient induction, and then it's outpatient follow-up.
Every fortnight or every 4
Well,
weeks?
you know what? I'm very blessed, and I do draw a line at using some agents today, and I have rheumatologists that handle that for me, and so they do it. It's every couple of weeks that they do it after the induction. I don't remember exactly.
Right. I have a question to Dr. Lee. How often have you had patients, because I have one patient, a 25-year-old female medical student, being diagnosed with AIDS people because of the uniform apparent picture. And she came back to me and says, we have this seasonal blurred vision every so often. When I saw her, I saw some flare, I saw some ASU reaction, there was like a sectoral iris atrophy. And I suspected Higgs ophthalmicus actually. How often have you seen such patients with Higgs ophthalmicus and Higgs uniform iris movement or pupil movement?
Yeah, the AIDS refers to the idiopathic version, but a lot of things can cause the tonic pupil syndrome. So surgery in the orbit, our most common is actually from optic nerve sheath fenestration, if you can believe that.
I think Zoster.
But Zoster is definitely, all of the viruses have been implicated, simplex as well as Epstein-Barr virus, all have been implicated in invasion of the ganglion. So yes, the answer is yes, I've seen that, and yes, it's been reported, but then you probably shouldn't call it Aedes tonic pupil anymore, you should probably call it herpes zoster related tonic pupil.
Thank you.
I apologize for the people who have questions, but we are already behind time, so we'll adjourn now, and we'll meet at 2:30 after lunch. Thank you.
Let's get him to take the picture while we're still out here.
How many?